Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mystic Junkies podcast, the history of mystery comedy show. We're not experts, we're just a little obsessed and a little crazy. But this week's no different. We're gonna just grab a drink, grab a joint, grab a friend. Let's dive in. What we're doing the death, the Black Death.
Bubonic Plague.
Bubonic Plague. We're gonna start off real happy.
Also known as the Black
good
Death
feels.
in certain parts.
Well, good right way to start the new year.
If you made it.
We kind of just went through something like that.
Yeah, something similar. Not nearly as bad.
Not nearly as bad, but similar.
You know, it's a good conversational topic.
Yeah. Well, how many people died of
It laid a lot of
COVID,
ground rules out.
supposedly?
Of COVID?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Well, the plague laid out a lot
where
of
do you
ground
get your
rules
numbers
for COVID.
from?
Well, they didn't have they didn't have really exact numbers back then either. But it might be close to the same number.
650 cases reported a year of bubonic plague.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still to this very day?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, even
There's
but-
7 cases reported in the U.S. yearly,
Yeah,
and then
less than 1,000.
Yeah, but it-
1,000 to 3,000 worldwide.
Yeah.
Mostly in Africa.
If you're playing with
Mostly
rats in the
Africa.
Congo, you get it.
Yeah,
You know.
right. But you can. It's healable now.
There's not much
Oh,
else
God.
to do in the
With
Congo
antibiotics.
than play with rats.
Yes.
So,
Watch out! Don't play with
I
rats
get
unless they're from the pet store, guys.
Well, the bubonic plague is one of 3 plagues. There are the bubonic plague, septicemic plague, and the third one is, let me look. Dash. Septicemia, bubonic, man.
And the
Why
man
is that?
plague. Yeah, that's plaguing the
I
world.
didn't realize there was 3.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mansplaining plague.
Sorry.
Where is
One more.
It's all good. We'll just cut this out.
Thanks.
We have that power.
We have the power.
It's all good.
Did someone say pneumonic plague?
No.
No.
That's
Oh,
the third
yeah.
one.
The pneumonic plague?
Like
Pneumonic, yeah.
pneumonia,
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, septicemic plague is the blood, and pneumonic is the lungs, and
And at the time, they probably
Bubonic.
thought it was all the same thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. It's diagnosed from vomiting, headaches,
Boils.
Dizziness.
Those big egg-like boils on
It's
They
the
come
swelling of
after-
the lymph nodes.
yeah.
swelling of lymph. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what the boil-looking things are, is the swelling of the lymph nodes.
What's a lymph node?
The
Lymph node. You have a few of them around
under
your
your
body,
arm, your neck,
hip,
your groin,
armpits,
you know, I mean,
behind your knees.
once cancer gets to your lymph nodes, you're pretty much,
Done.
It's
you know,
no
it's
go.
hard to come back.
It's like a drainage system in your body.
Yeah.
The lymph
Okay.
nodes.
Yeah.
It's where
That's a good way to put it.
all your toxins are coming out of.
Yeah.
So the bubonic plague would attack that or like that?
That
They
was,
would
And then put them on
swell.
display.
It
You
would-
know, pretty much. yeah,
Bubonic
it's pretty
plague,
nasty.
like it's contracted from a bite from a flea,
Flea.
or
Right.
Hares, rabbits. Some cats
Rodents.
have them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
They're
which that was the main
susceptible to-
misconception, right? Was that it came from the rats.
Yeah,
That's what I
Well,
always
the
heard.
rats were the
carriers.
the carriers. It
Right.
was the flea itself
It was the
that
flea
was
itself that-
transmission. To
So
everybody.
the flea would bite the person.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
then,
And then they
the
would get the
person
And you get a
would the
bacteria.
plague.
You
Yeah.
get a bacteria, and then the bacteria
spread
likes to go to
through.
the lymph nodes to replicate.
that's where it replicates and it'll swell, painful.
Well, as a
It takes,
bacteria, that's pretty smart. You want to get to the full body quickly. Go to the lymph
Right.
Well, it
nodes.
takes, if untreated, it takes like 36 hours until you're just dead.
Wow.
Nah, I think that
A little
I read 10
longer.
days.
1 to
10
10
days?
days.
I was like, dang, that's the worst.
Nowadays, I don't know, man.
Kill me faster.
1 to
yeah.
7.
If I'm doomed.
Still pretty quick.
Dang.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, you start seeing symptoms 1 to 7 days after you've been bitten, and the site itself will become black and pus
your
filled.
toe, yeah, your toes and your fingers turn black supposedly too.
Well, you know the and of course, you know, it being the 14th century, you know, it's nobody knows it. There's some from studying, I guess, bodies. They were even thinking that body lice could have been a carrier. You know,
Okay.
too.
Know that.
You know, as far as that goes, but
Well, people could also transmit it to each other, right?
if you with body fluids.
Fluids,
Just with
like
the
a
fluids.
cough or a
Okay.
something like that.
Okay. So it's
through
highly contagious and it spread pretty quickly.
Well, one plague doctor. This is what I found funny. A plague doctor was quoted that instantaneous death occurs when Ariel's spirit, escaping from the eyes of the sick man, strikes a healthy person standing and looking at the sick.
So through eyesight.
So this is what that one of the plague doctors. So they really were at the forefront of their medicine back in the day. You know?
Yeah. No make eye contact with the
with the dying.
Yeah, the spirit's gonna come and get you.
With the sick.
And it was mainly like he's coughing all over you, you know.
Yeah.
And,
So this is the time where they thought like spirits were the cause of
Of course,
illnesses,
yeah.
and
There
you
was
were
one
possessed
belief
or...
that it was an alignment of certain planets
They're looking for answers.
that
Really?
would cause this to happen. That it was basically sent from God. That it was sent here. Islamic believed that. As a matter of fact, in Islam, from what I read, in the Muslim religion, they didn't believe you should treat it. They believed that because it was a plague sent from God, you should let it run its course.
Yep.
Because that's what God
Would want.
intended.
Right, and that was a problematic belief because it led to a lot of pogroms, which was like the slaying of Jewish people because
they were told to go out and kill people.
They were mostly blamed the Jews for the spread in Europe. So, which is it's just like once again.
Yeah, they thought that God
the
was
Jews
Jews'
were scapegoated.
fault.
Yeah.
They were
Right.
scapegoated again.
But they said if you saw, like, there were a lot of religious sects that were just saying straight up, like, if you see someone that looks sinful or, or a heretic,
yes,
kill them in the street even, and that's like, what?
Stop the
that's
problem.
just human nature at its finest.
Yeah, the Jews, which is ironic because I remember during our pandemic, there was some lady, I can't remember her name, but she went on national television and was saying that the Jews were flying around in flying saucers, spreading.
Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding.
Really?
So it's like even in a sophisticated, as we like to think we're
That we are.
sophisticated,
Yeah.
some lady was like, "They're in the UFOs spreading COVID. They're spreading it everywhere, and like, with their magnets, their Jew magnets,
And their
shit.
space
laser
lasers.
beams." Yeah.
You know what? I'd always understood, but I couldn't find anything on. I would be interested if you saw something on this, Edith. Was that they didn't know where it was coming from, and then somehow they figured out, from what I had understood, they figured out it was the fleas, that it was the rats, that basically this was the beginning of the world figuring out that disease comes from filth.
Yes.
A lot, because before that, that wasn't really in the that somehow that there was something coming from the filth that was
Right.
causing it, and that because of that they started to eradicate the rats. They figured that out, but did that happen? Because when in my readings, I didn't see how they
started showering more. They started locking themselves down, kind of like the COVID stuff that we did. Stay inside, lock down, don't go talk to any doctors. Weren't seeing patients. Like they
but you're talking about 1300.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
there's, it's like
But they weren't cleaning themselves. They were barely cleaning
Well,
themselves back then.
The barely had out to clean themselves with.
I know,
so-
right? But then they started washing themselves more, and that's why, like, the fleas, they would actually, it led to them being cleaner and us as humanity trying to be a cleaner little monkey.
Well,
from what I gathered.
Somewhat. I mean, because it wasn't until the 19th century that we actually started to actually clean up our cities. I mean, it was way after that. There was even a belief in Christian religion that, in some Christian religion, that bathing was sinful.
Wow.
What?
Yes, because it could bring on sinful thoughts.
I see. That makes sense.
Supposedly.
Does it?
No! It does not!
But if there's people
let's
bathing
not
naked
run
in
that.
the
And
river-
here's the thing,
Well.
is you go, and I know this because we did a walking tour in Edinburgh. The city of Edinburgh is so old, like so many of them, that it's built itself on top of itself, right? So most big cities that are ancient have a city underneath it.
Yeah.
They're in layers. And we took the tour underneath. And one of the things they were talking about, we walked into this little room, and he goes, I just want you to imagine that there is no way to dispose of fecal matter. it goes on the street.
I was going to ask when that
That was around the 1800s.
Okay.
Before we really started, from my understanding, before that even happened.
Okay.
The reason there actually in Edinburgh, and I think it was in some cities, not only in everywhere you live smelt like shit and piss. Everywhere smelt like shit and piss. That the chamber pots were emptied at a certain time, so that was civilized. That was considered civilized.
Right.
So at this time, say at 11 o'clock and 4 o'clock was the emptying of the chamber pots, and if you were in a second, third, fourth, it just came right out the window.
Yep.
They didn't go down; it came out the window.
Right.
And thus, a big reason for big broad brim hats.
Right.
And the reason it was courteous to walk a woman on the inside was so she wouldn't get hit by the shit coming down on the other side.
So sweet.
And I know in Edinburgh, all the shit went down in. The reason they drank beer back then is because the water was all foul.
Right.
Because
Only purification
everything went straight into the ponds and lakes, and the ponds and lakes would get so bad that you could light them on fire.
Yeah.
And with the methane.
You know what I'm really happy about? We don't have to get covered in shit to court a woman anymore.
No.
Like, that's not something that has to
Well,
happen.
metaphorically, something.
No. But with the bubonic plague, that it was from filth. It was the rats, the rats that came in and infiltrated and being
Sounds like a
bitten by the
military
rats.
force.
And I thought it was interesting that it killed a third of Europe.
75 million worldwide.
One-third of Europe.
It was
the number was. They
had-
took
there
the
was-
number anywhere from I think 60 million up to 200 million. They don't know how many it killed, but about a third of Europe was wiped out.
Which is 25 million.
25 million in Europe.
For that time was a lot.
75 million in the
Was
world.
everybody.
Yeah.
well,
There's only a 380 million population back then.
Yeah, so that's a lot.
So that knocked out a
Global.
third of the
Global.
globe.
Global.
And the brunt of that death happened in a 3-year period.
Well, it came back multiple times, actually.
Yeah, well, it did, but during the bubonic plague,
Well, in the 1600s is
The
when
death-
all the way up to
the-
1666.
was actually in about a 7-year period, but most of the death happened in the first 3 years.
I also, I don't know if you guys read I read it. It actually originated in China. Did anybody else?
I didn't
I heard that
Is
was
where
China too.
where the rats came from.
Not even that. Just having originated in China and Inner Asia, the Black Death decimated the army of, I'm going to butcher this name, but Kipchak Khan Janibeg, while he was besieging the Genoese trading port of Kaffa. So, like, essentially it started, and to the point where he was actually, it was decimating his army, where he was launching dead bodies into the city to try and infect them.
Right.
And then all through the trade ports, it went to into the Mediterranean.
Correct.
And then from there, it just spread.
Yeah,
and
that's
spread,
right.
spread.
It went to Italy.
Yeah, Italy.
And then from Italy, and because
Just spread
those
from
rats,
there.
the black rats, which carried it,
Yes.
were mainly in grain.
Yes.
Radius.
And the
Spread.
grain
Spread.
export.
And they had
is what
no clue.
carried them.
They had no.
But they had no idea that it
No
was the
idea.
rats.
Zero
You know?
idea. But it decimated this one army, and that's where that's the earliest, I guess earliest evidence of the first time they saw it in history was in this Chinese province.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is pretty wild because even back then, it spread pretty fucking quick. I mean, it spread within a year.
Right.
It wasn't like it took
terrifying.
10 years to get to Europe. It was
No.
within a year.
Yes.
So even those ancient trade routes,
Yeah, all those trade routes screwed them.
it's wild.
That was the third epidemic when it hit China and Mongolia. That was the third time around.
So
Before
that's not
then,
where I
it
read.
started in Eastern Roman Empire, and then the third time,
Constantinople, right? That area.
The 6th
It's just-
century.
yeah, that was the 6th century. But
Okay,
then the
that's-
third epidemic affected China and Mongolia and India.
Okay.
So it's interesting that we talk about, the reason that the pandemic, our last pandemic, was because we travel so easily in between. But then you, as you just said, Mike, you look back and you go, here are these people. It took, eons to get from one place to another, and still the plague spread throughout the world
Faster than we can
really fast.
Yeah.
Very fast.
Probably the only place
train.
we don't know that it went was to
Rats.
this
To the
hemisphere,
Americas, yeah.
to the
Yeah.
Americas.
Yeah.
It didn't get over here.
Rats
We didn't
get
have any train
everything,
routes
man.
set up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And arguably, once we did establish this country, we were like a little bit cleaner.
Right.
Maybe. A little bit.
Oh, we were much cleaner.
A little bit.
Yeah. By then things was
Yeah.
they were starting to figure some of that stuff.
Well, we
out.
brought just different diseases when we came over here and
For sure.
established things.
Well,
we just had
smallpox.
a different
what
type of immune
wiped
system.
out a ton of people.
Yeah.
But you know what? The sidebar to this, I thought two things that was super interesting was that because the bubonic plague, it did two things. One, what we just talked about, it inspired a movement towards hygiene and cleaning up things
And science.
and along that lines, Pompeii. Have you ever been there?
No.
No.
Okay, so Pompeii, when you go there, that their city street, their street system in there is so sophisticated. I mean, it's a grid, and there's still street signs up, but they built their city up high with the ocean down below. And what they did, they built gutter systems right in front of the homes, to where you took all the fecal matter came out, went into the gutter systems, and then they washed it down into the bay. Hardly anybody else was doing that. That they were way ahead of their time. I think.
Rome was known for having aqueducts and plumbing.
Correct.
Yeah, so like that was a lost art,
Yeah.
if you will, or lost technology, if
They
you
just
will.
didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. Well,
No, I
too
mean
lazy.
they fell, and then the Dark Ages, and they
Yeah.
had to rediscover everything.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Right.
But but then you always think whenever there's something like that, there's the silver lining to anything. Well, the silver lining to the bubonic plague was, one, it wiped out so many people that it brought, you didn't have as many workers. So all of a sudden, the workers had leverage that they never had before to get their wages increased. And that was the beginning of, some sort of fairness from treating your workers like slaves, because they needed them so bad. The other side of it was that they said it cheapened life so much because so many people died that it led to, and I think one of you mentioned it, it led to this horrific killing, just a no value to life, crime, everything went really high, murder, crime, rebellions, all that kind of stuff, because it just kind of led to a thought process of why even care? Why even care about anything?
The faith in the system fell.
That's right. It's
Yeah.
everybody for themselves. Everybody for themselves.
That's the most dangerous, by the way, is when the majority of the populace stops believing in the system. That's when things really go to shit. Like, very quickly too. Like,
Absolutely.
We can destroy a lot of shit in a little bit of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, all empathy ends.
That was the big worry about this pandemic.
Yes.
Was that people were there, and like you said earlier, like I think the workforce had their opportunity to leverage the system and kind of didn't. I mean, we're in the restaurant industry. We're so necessary right now,
Yes.
but we're still just like walking around like we have no leadership. We don't have any.
Well, but still and yet,
Yeah.
what this last pandemic and the bubonic plague did the same thing. It made the workforce more valuable.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
in both cases.
Yeah.
And it also created this worldwide division and a feeling of you got to just you got to put walls up. You just got to protect yourself. Everything's fucked.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so we're 1,000 years, you know, I don't know, maybe not 1,000, but we're hundreds of years down the road.
Yeah.
And
We're
yet-
supposed to be way more sophisticated and intelligent and all this stuff we have, but yet you really look at it, and in a sense, we didn't respond to this pandemic much different than they responded to the bubonic plague in the mid 1300s.
Not
And that's
much.
sad.
And we also, also the Spanish influenza. We had basically the same strategy. Don't go outside, wear a mask.
Yeah.
Like they were doing the same thing in
Lockdown.
the 1920s. I mean,
That's been the reoccurring
the only difference
thing.
is we did come up with a vaccine.
Well,
Just-
yeah. I mean, well, we have modern technology, but it's just the mindset of the mass population was kind of that same thing, and that pandemic started a movement towards changing the world in a bad way and a good way at the same time.
At the same time, yeah.
And I think this one is doing the same,
same thing.
Yeah.
It's, maybe it's a necessary evil that
Maybe.
ever
Changes.
so often
Yeah.
with
Come around.
that many people on Earth, you're going to get this.
The Earth likes to wipe itself clean every now and then. That's what I've noticed.
You know,
throughout
maybe we
history.
should take it as a lesson more.
Well,
So, like,
Or just
What do they
remember to be
say?
Clean.
like if you go into a cycle, the world works in cycles. If it repeats itself, you need to change what you did in order to break that cycle. This sounds like history is repeating itself, and there was a cycle that happened, and maybe us as the human race should look at it and be like, we should try something different because we did this already.
Right.
We keep doing this.
Well, at least with this pandemic, you had communication. You know,
Right.
you had broad-based communication. Even though what we
Which
saw
also
was
led to a lot of confusion, though, too.
correct.
Mass confusion.
Exactly
Mass
right.
confusion and chaos.
Because there's
Which
no
is more dangerous.
Yeah.
because there's not trust.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what we learned again is that, and I go back to what I've said a million times when we talk about the nuclear stuff. I think that most of the average people in the world are pretty sane,
Yeah.
and it's the leaderships that are trying to hang on to power, that are trying to hang on to their money, that are trying to hang on to their control over things that fuck shit up because. And they're the ones, I think, in my opinion, that spread the lies, the dissension,
fear.
you know, because they want things to be kept separated.
Absolutely.
They don't
Yeah.
want
Make
things
some money.
moving together.
It's dangerous to have that big of a collective effort, though, in their eyes.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
I mean, like we were talking about, like the rumors that spread during the bubonic plague. Honestly, when you have a leadership being looked at like, hey, what the fuck is going on here? The worst thing that a populace can hear is we have no
we
clue.
don't know.
Yeah.
Because that'll cause way more damage. So it's like, I'm not saying blame it on the Jews. I'm just saying like you have to come up with something. There's a great example that I read in it was in Sumeria where their crops were dying. And it was because they were using seawater to water their crops.
So it'll
And
dry
all the salt got into the reservoirs
yeah.
and shit. And they were like, people were dying, and they were like, what the fuck's going on? Like, oh, God hates us, so we have to sacrifice more of you. And arguably, that sustained less damage. That belief system sustained less damage than the guy being like, yeah, we have no idea. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had to like give an answer.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
just something.
they're like, fuck this. And like you said, the system, the faith in the system breaks.
Chaotic
everything.
questioning
And then
is
everything
total
dangerous.
chaos.
Total chaos. And that's when more people die, arguably. Just saying. Interesting.
Very true.
Necessary evil, or
That's what leaders are kind of meant to do. That though, they have to give you something.
Yeah.
Like they can't
To ease
You have to
your-
pretend to know what's going on to a degree.
I mean, that's just, fatherhood too, or motherhood, Same
Yeah.
thing. You gotta tell them something to get them to shut the fuck up and stop crying.
Otherwise, they throw a temper tantrum. Yeah,
It's so fucking true.
it's true. It's dark. It's a dark truth, but it is true. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But do you think
yeah, you
this,
think if and we've said this before. You imagine if COVID actually over the past, in 3 years, if COVID killed percentage-wise the same amount of people that the bubonic plague killed, what would have happened?
Massive failure.
I think
System failure. Yeah, completely.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's coming back. I think that's another dark age.
Right.
If that many people died, yeah.
I don't think we could handle all the dead bodies too. I don't believe like the funeral systems. I don't think,
God.
and no one would know what to
We
do.
could barely
We
take care
couldn't
of it
do
as is.
anything
but
like
during
that.
Oh no,
yeah.
no.
Couldn't deal with that. That's like, and then like hygiene would go down. Like I feel like it would be this grand cycle of
And some
pure
new
chaos.
kind of plague would happen because of all the dead bodies.
Yeah.
And,
You see the example. I mean, like Trump quelled his base by telling everybody it was China's virus. He had to say
He
something.
pointed the finger at somebody else.
China.
China.
What did he say? Kung flu.
Oh Jesus
Yeah.
Christ!
That was one of the funniest things I've ever heard. I'm
That
not gonna
was
lie.
so ridiculous.
In the moment, kung flu.
But of course, in
Should've been
the,
so
then he
funny.
loved it. Then he
in the
brought
grand
it all
scheme of
over.
it, in the grand scheme of all that, you go, well, what the fuck difference does it make where it came from? I mean, you know,
It's
It's
when,
two bitches.
when you really are backing up, but when you're in the middle of it,
Yep.
it's like you got to deal with what you're in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah.
worry about.
But the masses
you can
want-
worry about where it came from later. You know,
Yeah.
a logical
But the
person does.
the masses want something to
majority
fucking.
An illogical.
They just wanted somebody to blame.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. They want
That's
their
all.
whipping post.
That's a majority mindset.
You almost
sure.
need that. It is. I think it is psychological. You almost need to know what the fuck it is before you can be told to go stay indoors and don't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, I think that's when rumors spread. That's when conspiracies start rising. Is when you don't give them an actual answer. I think that's when. You know,
Just
like you
blamed
know,
it on UFOs.
we have all this global communication, and that kind of put it was a lot of fuzz. It was a lot
there's
of,
so much
so
disinformation.
much. But yeah, it was too much going on. Like where people couldn't really cling on to any one thing
Yep.
as like a truth. you
well,
know?
it is interesting in that you know, just like, and of course, anytime you say Fauci, you got half the people going just tuning out.
Jesus,
you know,
yeah.
immediately. But he was just
That's true.
he was a spokesperson for the scientific community for the most
right.
part. But you just go, this is not a defined thing. They're looking for a definition. They're looking for an it. This is something that is constantly evolving.
Right.
Constantly evolving. It's not, science isn't just that.
It's not
You know what I
definite.
mean? It changes. And scientists know that.
Yeah.
You know, but it goes to your point. When you got the masses out there that are not, it's not that they're unintelligent, but they're definitely not sophisticated to that.
As a group, they are.
As a
No,
group, they're not.
they aren't.
You know, there's a lot of
Mentality.
people out there that are very intelligent about the things they need to know. They're
Yes.
very intelligent about the things they need to know. You get outside of that global, out of that for them, and you know they don't even have, they just don't have a motivation to need to know that.
Yeah.
And so when you start throwing, you see how easy it is to go, well, you know, whether it was the bubonic plague or this one, you go, okay, this is what where we think we're heading. We think you need to do this. This would be the best thing to do. And then 3 months later, okay, here's what we learned now. Now, really, we learned something, so it's better now to do this than that. And then 6 months later, it's like, oh, now we're really clear on this. Now this, and all those people go, you're all lying. It's a bunch of, well, no.
Well,
It changes.
It changes
but,
every damn day.
But to your point, it might be better for a leadership to go, hey, scientists, tell us what you got. And then we'll decide how to
Pallet
Pass
it
it
to
on.
the
propaganda
people.
this
Yeah.
to
A
the
little more eloquently.
masses
Safest way.
in a way that they won't lose their fucking mind.
Well, there's a great example in the movie Contagion.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? It was a Matt Damon movie.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
By the way, when the pandemic came out, that was trending on Netflix.
It definitely was.
so
There's
annoying.
all those type
But
of
there's
movies.
a great
yeah.
there's a great point in there, and it's where Morpheus, I can't think of his actual name,
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
but there's a point where he's in Chicago, I think, or something like that, and he says, "Don't worry, it hasn't spread here yet. It'll be fine, and don't worry, we're not closing down, we're not quarantining the city." And he lied, and then he lied, and he got his family out,
Yeah.
and that became the news that broke, and that caused like
The
chaos in that place because they were like, you just fucking lied to us. You told us, Lawrence Fishburne, you told us that we were not going to be contained in this area, and then you contained us. And it's like, and then he went back on that, and then it was his own insider information that he got his family out, and that's what like caused way more fucking damage.
And the most amazing part of that story is that Lawrence Fishburne got that part and not Samuel L. Jackson.
tired of these motherfuckers.
Samuel L. Jackson was too hot for that shit.
Because he wouldn't have lied.
Good, yeah.
That's the
He
story.
would have told the truth. But when something like that happens, it broke the faith in that city, and then they started burning the whole city down because they were like, you just lied to us, like you know what I
How
mean?
can we trust anything?
So
And then they become their own worst enemy.
that's right. It's
Yeah.
way worse than a pandemic at that point.
Right. Instead of going, okay, we've been through this a few times over the last 1,000 years. What do we need to do? Well, why don't we prepare a strategy that binds us all together, that gets us to where we all are. Okay, this is going to happen again.
Right.
When it happens again, we all need to help each other. We all need to do these. You know what I mean? We need to get a mindset going in that direction.
Let's act like we've been here before.
Yeah. Which, don't get me wrong, there was a big part of the population that did do that.
Yes.
There
was a
is.
lot of
There is.
separation.
And because it doesn't take a huge part of the population going into chaos to fuck everything up. I mean, when you just take 20%, that's a lot of people fucking shit up.
It's a lot of Molotov cocktails.
Yes, it is.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about silver lining, though. Like, I think one of the silver linings we got from our pandemic was, in America at least, was how feeble the system is, especially with our supply chain. Once we cut off trade, we were like, well, we don't make shit in this country. What do we actually have? What are we actually able to supply ourselves with? Like, all we do is stockpile. We don't have any inside manufacturing happening.
There is the yin and yang
Yes.
to socialism, communism,
Yes.
capitalistic free market.
Yes.
And how if you go too hard on one end, too hard on the other end, it's bad.
Fuck yourself.
It can be bad because of those things, and both sides will tout the other, and really it's obviously it's a blend. It's a blend of the best of
balance
both.
between the two.
But yeah, it's hard to convince people to do that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Absolutely, when money's involved. Well, all right, that was lively.
Yeah, we
did
covered it.
Yes.
Oh wait, Ring Around the Rosie. I just wanted to say that
Ring
song
Around
is
the
all
Rosie?
about the
Final
Bubonic
fact.
Plague.
Final fact.
Final fact. Ring Around the Rosie.
Pocket full.
And it was
of
actually, from what I
posies.
guess, it was
Ashes.
ring a ring.
Ashes, we all fall down.
Well, supposedly it was tissue. We all fall down.
Yeah, we sang something totally different.
Yeah,
we ring a ring of roses.
It was supposedly it was really ring a ring of roses.
Yeah.
Pocket full of posies, because everybody thought
tissue, we all fall down.
because everybody thought holding a bunch of flowers up to your face would save you from the plague.
Yeah.
No.
We talk shit now,
Looking at you in
but
that century.
back in that day, I would have believed some shit like that.
Just hold some flowers. It smells better. It's good for you.
Yeah,
I
I would have done that.
Right? There's like yogi teachers out there telling, just hold some flowers.
Yeah.
You know,
Downward dog pose and hold flowers in front of your face.
you'll never get the plague.
Well, we heard shit like that in this pandemic.
Oh, no
Remember there was
doubt, no
people
doubt.
selling water online that they blessed, and that was
Dude, the guy that
the
got
cure
busted in
for
Fort Myers or
pandemic.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, just
Snake oil
vials of
salesman.
like what was it like? It was ended up like being bleach and like some other kind of crazy chemical in water and selling it to people for a while too.
It's a medicine show.
Yeah, made tens of thousands, if not
It's a
hundreds of
medicine
thousands
show.
of dollars. Yeah, off of just
Feeding people bleach.
And people
their
bought
own
it.
little bottle shit.
Yes,
Yep, and
people bought it.
Yep, people bought it, and
What
they,
are people like?
the cops had to bust down the whole fucking
Well,
operation.
the thing about it is,
Charming enough.
when you're doing stuff like that, it's not about that it's going to be some big thing. You're just sitting there going, I can make and package this shit for $1. I can sell it for 10. If I can come up with 100,000 idiots that will buy it,
That's a
bada bing.
There's the lie, though. There's
Nice
the
little
lie.
pop right there.
I see
Yeah.
your 100,000 idiots. I'll raise you 500,000. That's what that is. I'll call.
I think that's a good ending.
Let's find some more.
All right.
Where can they find us, Jason?
Good talk.
Lay it out
Find
for
us
them.
on social media. Visit our link tree that's in the bottom in this description. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Podbean. Visit McCurdy's Comedy Theater in Sarasota and laugh with us in this room. Thank you guys. Have a good one.